Welcome back, everybody, to the WAM, the Wrestling Association of the Mid-South. We have tackled the spectacle of Amazing Grapple's 1931, the biggest event of the year, and we have pulled away with the strongest showing that our company has produced thus far. We've also crowned a new heavyweight champion to drastically change the landscape of the WAM, and that is our new signee, SPW former Rahan Marlowe. Rahan Marlowe has not been with the WAM for long, but he quickly made an impact and won the Derby as well as that WAM Heavyweight Championship. So we've got a lot of fallout to cover in this episode, and we are going to be sprinting straight to the Frank Norris Memorial Show. So dig in and get cozy, because we're going to get right into it. And there is something that is vital to this save in this playthrough, and thank you to Priceless Sword who actually brought this up in the comments. We are going to be declaring war on Southern Pro Wrestling, SPW, and what this should be doing is basically sending a message to our workers that if you want to sign with SPW, you will not be working here any longer. And the whole precipice of this entire mod in this playthrough, not the mod per se, but my playthrough in this local to global journey, is competing against SPW as Don Loomis, the man who did me dirty, who did Frank Norris dirty. Although Frank Norris has passed since. So we are officially declaring war, and we will see and monitor and announce any kind of happenings that have to do directly because of that. And justly so, they've reacted by declaring war right back on the WAM as expected. And we've got a big edition of the Amazing Grappling spectacle in store, the fallout from the spectacle of Amazing Grapples, and we're just getting things started with a pre-show match between Oscar Kohler and Randy Edson. We made this match far too long. We should have made it much shorter, and that caused it to drag in the middle, as well as their lack of psychology, but both men deliver in-ring performances of 22 as we just get a poor rating of 16 for our pre-show match, just trying to get Oscar Kohler some more experience, some more reps. But to get the show started, we've got Neil Allman in the ring, microphone in hand. And I made quite the typo here that I didn't realize. Neil Allman professes gratitude, not gratuity. He is not giving the audience any kind of tip for any kind of service that he received. I just meant gratitude. But he professes gratitude and a genuine gratefulness for receiving the fan support he has thus far. However, Neil Allman acknowledges that he has not been delivering the way that he should be. Neil Allman states that if he receives another shot at the heavyweight championship, he will not come up short again. After this brief moment, Neil Allman would make his way back up to the curtain in the back. And in an interesting note, Neil Allman disconnects the wired microphone and brings it to the back with him. You remember in the last event, or in the last episode, Neil Allman, when he was cutting promos, he was bringing the microphone with him, kind of taking the opportunity away from anyone else that may have wanted to cut a promo. But production may have bought a few more microphones to alleviate that issue. But you could just see Neil Allman kind of clinging to the microphone a little bit. And we get a segment rating of 58. Neil Allman is hot on the mic. We can just let him improvise, and he gets the show off to a good start. However, this next match really took a toll, and I knew the rating wasn't going to be great given how the match ended, but we had to get Super Shield in, but I felt like it was vital to the story, despite the fans hating the ending to the match. We see Super Shield making his in-ring debut against Masked Hammer. However, Masked Hammer would ultimately get himself intentionally disqualified, and what happened here is Super Monkey would continue to prevent Masked Hammer to utilize any heelish tactics, kind of being that ethical enforcement officer, for lack of a better term, I suppose. And Super Monkey was distracting Masked Hammer, irritating him, frustrating him, and getting into his head a little bit. And Masked Hammer eventually just took it so far, not just trying to utilize heelish tactics to win the match, but he just abuses a 5 count from the referee. He continues pummeling Super Shield while he's on the ropes, and ultimately gets himself disqualified in just an act of anger and frustration and lashing out and getting a bit of brutality out on Super Shield. But all in all, Super Shield does pick up a victory in his first match here on the WAM. And like I said, the fans hated the end of the match, but I had to risk it for the biscuit a little bit. And there's no going back from it now. Masked Hammer had an in-ring performance of 38, Super Shield at 25. We get a much better match in the next contest here, as we've got tag team action between Sebastian Morales and Woodrow Gunter going up against Diego Bergen and Turner Spitler. And Morales and Gunter would actually come out on top. and this match didn't have a ton of story behind it. These were just the boys that we didn't have ready for in-ring competition for this evening, so we had to get them some work, you know. Turner Spiller is turning into a very solid name, and Sebastian Morales, of course, has been a solid name. Woodrow Gunter's getting there as well, and Diego Bergen, you know, he's kind of in between there. But we get a segment rating of 42. This definitely sets the show back in the right direction, and it gets us back at that white-hot crowd heat, because the fans are always happy to see Sebastian Morales picking up victories. We've got our next segment, a 37 overall, and we've got the Dark Carnival making their way to the ring, hoisting their newly won tag team championships. The group maintains a stoic portrayal, although Bryant Hines is acting much more animated, clearly elated with the championship victory at the last event. Bryant Hines would parade his champions around the ring until he is interrupted. That interruption would come by former champions, the Wellington Dynasty, accompanied by Bronson Fraley. Chuck Wellington stands at the curtain, announcing to the crowd that the Dark Carnival are champions of nothing, stating that their father, Barnabas Beef Wellington, has made the decision to disband the tag team championships, effective immediately. Chuck doesn't stop there, as he encourages the Dark Entourage to stay in the ring, as he announces Craig Bean has been scheduled for singles competition. So, a really short angle here, but it's got quite the repercussions. The Wellington brothers, fresh off of losing their tag team championships, they go talk to dad, they go speak to their father, the owner of the Wham, and evidently, the tag team championships have been removed from active competition, thus vacating them and leaving the Dark Carnival no longer champions. So a little bit of a chess move, as the not-so-talented in-ring competitors have got that backstage pull and that they can use to their advantage. But in the next match, we would see Bronson Fraley and Craig Bean go one-on-one, mano-a-mano, and Bronson Fraley, the former heavyweight champion, of course, takes care of business against Craig Bean. However, Craig Bean matching the performance of Fraley, as they both get a 40, and the segment rating gets 40 as well. And so really, I'm not upset about this match at all. Craig Bean is actually a pretty solid competitor, and he can deliver some good performances. And we're going to see Craig Bean kind of get put to the test a little bit and see if he can actually come through on that. But in this instance, Bronson Fraley coming out victorious here. And then in our next segment, we jump straight into a triple threat match, as we've got Elijah Mays, Hermenegildo Ramirez, and Christopher Hartwell duking it out in a triple threat comp. In another solid match here, good performances by Elijah Mays and Hermenegildo Ramirez, but Elijah Mays would be the one to come out on top here after forcing Christopher Hartwell to submit. Christopher Hartwell just with an in-ring performance of 29, not his best performance, but Elijah Mays 45 and Ramirez at 55. However, what this means, Elijah Mays just put down a couple of junior heavyweights, one of them being a recent contender in Hermenegildo Ramirez, so Elijah Mays has just done himself a big service in moving up that contention ladder for the junior heavyweight championship. Moving on to the next segment, we've got Rahan Marlowe making his first appearance in front of a Wham audience as heavyweight champion. Rahan Marlowe takes a moment to put over the champions of the past and claims it will be an honor to surpass them all. Rahan Marlowe then thanks the Wham management for recognizing his talent and giving him a shot at championship glory. Marlowe discusses his tenure with SPW, citing a decade of service that was never met with proper appreciation. Marlowe claims he is happy to be here in the Wham, noting it as a place where he can establish his legacy, as he is in a league of his own. Marlowe's attitude suddenly sees a shift and begins denouncing Wham talent, highlighting the short time he spent in the Wham before becoming champion. The new champ ensures the fans that they've finally got someone that they can count on to lead the company, brushing off any hint of doubt in his abilities. Segment rating of 48, not bad work here from the new champion, just cutting a solo promo, and clearly we found more microphones so we can have more angles and segments like this. And then we've got tag team action, mixed tag team action, as another new signing, Ivy Baldridge, makes her in-ring debut. She made a splash at the last event, helping Joe Cartwright defend his championship, but now she is in the ring and she's got some work to do to get better. But we get a decent match between the Suarez siblings and Joe Cartwright and Ivy Baldridge, as Gabriela Suarez would actually cause Baldridge to submit. So Gabriela Suarez in-ring performance of 37, Ivy with a 26, Emilio Suarez with 51, and Joe Cartwright at 49. So our junior heavyweights doing some good work, as they always do. We know that there's some bad blood between the Suarez siblings and the Cartwright camp, so we will just have to see what exactly comes about from this, but Ivy Baldridge has firmly planted herself as an ally of Joe Cartwright. Segment rating of 43 for this match, and we're going to move on. And this, our main event, Friedrich Herzog sending a message to Rohan Marlowe as well as the rest of the locker room with a decisive victory over former junior heavyweight champion Wayne Blankenship. We get a segment rating of 47, Friedrich Herzog with a nice in-ring performance of 54, Wayne Blankenship down at 23. And like I said, this match, this main event contest, is just Friedrich Herzog displaying his might, and obviously not a happy man after losing his heavyweight championship. He has made it physically known to Rohan Marlowe that he is coming for him, and this just cements that. Friedrich Herzog is still the #1 contender. He still gets a rematch. It's just a matter of when. So, solid show, honestly. We had that really poor rating to get us started, but the show was able to sustain itself for the most part. Overall rating of 47, and I am not upset with that. We're just going to tell Masked Hammer and Elijah Mays that they are awesome to try to keep their morales as high as we can. Made $1,800, and I think we're almost ready to start broadcasting if we can continue this consistent cash flow. And we do see the increase of popularity from 31 to 32 in the Mid-South, and we are just 3 points of popularity to growing in size. And that's going to be big. And now that we are in between shows, I haven't done this often in this series, but I do want to take a moment to just take a look through the roster, take a look at everyone's popularities, and just kind of see what they have grown to. Almost all these guys are new entries into the database, generated characters after the game is started, so they're all starting with 0 popularities, and we are really just having to grow just about everyone from the ground up unless they came from somewhere like SPW. So we are mainly just looking at what their popularity in the Mid-South is right now, considering we are still very regional at this point. And so we've got Albie Dewberry, 23. That man is on the shelf. He's going to be on the shelf for a while, so we got to continue to get him involved with these promos and stuff to keep that popularity up, make sure it doesn't fall too much. Angus Wellington at 19 in the Mid-South. Our boy August Washburn hasn't seen the ring in a while. We just keep him in the locker room because he's got a great personality, honestly. 10 popularity in the Mid-South. Black Bull, 26. Blue Mage, 25. Brian Hatcher at 15. Bronson Fraley at 26. Bryant Hines, 18. Chris Brownfield at 12. He is growing it rather quickly given his managerial role, so you love to see that. Chuck Wellington at 20. Craig Bean at 22. Diego Bergen, 21. Duke Wellington, 15. Elijah Mays, the most popular wrestler on our roster by far, at 52, and that's because he had that head start, as he is one of the actual characters put into the database by Mark Northern, the creator of the mod. Emilio Suarez at a 30 here in the Mid-South, you love to see that. Friedrich Herzog, 34, our most popular heavyweight. Fritz Hattendorf at a 17. Gabriella at 17 as well. Hermenegildo Ramirez has worked his way up to a 30. Ivy Baldridge is just at an 8, but she's only made a couple of appearances so far. Joe Cartwright at a 27. Kenny Weil is our referee at 21. Christopher Hartwell at 18. He is more popular around other regions in the United States as he is more active in other companies. He's really just kind of become another guy, just another guy on our roster at this point here in the WAM. Kuni Hashiguchi with a popularity of 10. Masked Hammer at 16. We are building him up. Neil Allman at 33, that homegrown talent. Oscar Kohler's up to 15. Randy Edson's at 14. Rohan Marlowe, he's got probably the highest accumulative popularity in the United States aside from Elijah Mays, but he's at 33 in the Mid-South with that heavyweight championship. Riker Zucker, 18. Sebastian Morales, 30, but you can see he is quite the star over in Mexico. Super Monkey, 8. Super Shield at 9. The Great Matsuo has gotten up to 10 since he's come over to the WAM. Turner Spittler at 26. Wayne Blankenship at 15. and Woodrow Gunter at 30. Obviously, the guys that have come from SPW have got a bit more popularity in the spillover regions as they've been able to broadcast for, I think, at least a couple years now. Without further ado, we are getting right into the next event, the Amazing Grappling Spectacle Edition 74. And once again, we've got a pre-show match featuring Oscar Kohler picking up a victory, this time over August Washburn. August Washburn with a rating of 20, Oscar Kohler with an in-ring performance of 21. This match just getting a segment rating of 19, so weak performances, but we're trying to build up our boy Oscar Kohler. Moving on into the next segment, we've got Neil Allman once again opening up the show in the center of the ring, ready to speak to the crowd. He opens as he is pleased to announce that tonight will be an action-packed show, highlighted by a long-awaited heavyweight championship match between Friedrich Herzog and Rahan Marlow. Allman takes a moment to put over Herzog and Marlow, citing them both as winners of the Derby. Neil Allman also acknowledges his own Derby victory. His tone would then shift and becomes much more serious. Neil Allman begins to speak to Barnabas Beef Wellington in the back, claiming he needs to be in this match. Allman is met with a discomforting silence, to which his demeanor continues to shift. Neil Allman asks once more to be included, and while nobody is around to answer, the silence seems to send Neil Allman off in a fit, bringing the microphone with him as he storms to the back. Segment rating of 43. In this instance, it seems that Neil Allman did not do well with the script to follow. However, we have seen him shine in these improvised segments, so we're going to continue to do it. We're not going to let this deter us. Segment rating of 43, not a bad way to get the show started. And we've just got some one-on-one competition to get us going. Diego Bergen, Sebastian Morales. Sebastian Morales picking up the victory over Diego Bergen, and these two get a segment rating of 43. Diego Bergen had a performance of 39, and Sebastian Morales with a performance of 48. Moving on into the next match, junior heavyweight action, Hermenegildo Ramirez picking up the victory over Christopher Hartwell. Remember, these two were involved in a triple threat match last month, but these were the two that came up short. As Elijah Mays picked up the victory, we see Hermenegildo Ramirez with a performance of 52, Christopher Hartwell at 34. All in all, we get a segment rating of 45 for this match. Up next, we get tag team action, as masked men are aplenty here in this one. We got Masked Hammer and Turner Spiller picking up the victory over Super Monkey and Super Shield. This is their debut as a tag team, but now both Super Monkey and Super Shield have competed in the Wham ring at least once. And Masked Hammer would actually pick up the victory after he pinned Super Shield. And remember, Masked Hammer and Super Shield went one-on-one last month, and Super Shield picked up the victory via DQ. This time, Hammer and Turner Spitler pick up the victory here. Not bad performances here, as Turner Spitler gets a 36, Hammer at 31, Super Monkey at 34, but Super Shield is down at 24, so we'd like to see that improve a little bit. But we got the ethical enforcement storyline beginning and starting to develop, as Super Monkey and Super Shield have kind of just unnecessarily stuck their nose into the business of others, trying to just enforce honor and nobility. However, in this next segment, we would see Turner Spiller and Masked Hammer continue their aggression after their victory as they continue their beatdown of the ethical enforcers, sending a message that they have no regard for honor and nobility, but will give themselves an advantage by any means necessary. So, just establishing themselves a little bit as heels. We still don't have heel-face alignment game-wise, but story-wise, clearly we've got some baby faces and some heels, and Hammer and Turner Spiller are just kind of establishing themselves as the latter. Moving on into our next match, Bronson Fraley, Woodrow Gunter, two very capable heavyweights going one-on-one, and Woodrow Gunter picks up the victory. And you'd see that we have a distraction from Brian Hines, but what that would actually be is the lights going out on Bronson Fraley. This is nothing new. We've seen the Dark Carnival get involved with the Wellington Dynasty, specifically Bronson Fraley, because he is that in-ring performer, their best in-ring performer, their enforcer in that aspect. But this time, they cost him the match. There weren't a lot of stakes in this match, but Bronson Fraley once again being thwarted and being at a disadvantage due to his association. So we get a segment rating of 41 here for this match. Not a bad match by any means. Fraley with a performance of 39, Woodrow Gunter at 43, and we continue to see this storyline develop. And we get another and we get another segment between these guys, and following a frustrating loss, Bronson Fraley begins to lash out at the Wellington brothers, refusing any kind of consolation. The Wellington brothers are taken back and showing clear hesitancy to stand up to their enforcer. However, they continue to follow him to the back and attempt to calm down their monster. So clearly, they're not going to mess with Bronson Fraley, they're not going to tell him how to feel, but they know that Bronson Fraley's got that allegiance, so they're not necessarily deterred in that way. So we just get a little bit more of development of this storyline, and actually not a bad segment rating consisting of all three Wellington brothers. So moving on, not only is it a poor match, but an extremely short match as well, as we get Ivy Baldridge coming to a draw with Kuni Hashiguchi in 4 minutes and 20 seconds, following an interference from the Suarez siblings. Ivy Baldridge, performance of 23, Kuni Hashiguchi, 37. I'm not going to expect a lot from the ladies right now. Most of the finer competitors in ring-wise for the ladies are not residing in America right now, so I'm not going to break my back and break my bank trying to get those gals into the WHAM, but we're just going to do a gradual introduction to the women's division. And this isn't necessarily the strongest way to do it, as the Suarez siblings quickly force Kuni Hashiguchi out of the ring, seeming intent on punishing Ivy Baldridge for her involvement in their business with Joe Cartwright. And Emilio Suarez is not getting particularly physical with either of these ladies, but he is kind of using his strength advantage to dictate what the Suarez siblings want to do with them, if that makes sense. But Gabriella begins to pound on a helpless Ivy Baldridge before Joe Cartwright would quickly make an appearance to put an end to the Suarez shenanigans. Segment rating of 41 for this bit, but it continues, as this proved to be a setup aimed at Joe Cartwright, as an attack was launched from Emilio as soon as the champion came to the aid of Ivy Baldridge. However, before too much damage could be done to Cartwright, Elijah Mays would storm the ring, forcing the Suarez siblings to retreat. As Ivy Baldridge collected herself, Elijah Mays and Joe Cartwright shared an intense face-off in the center of the ring. So we see the victor of a triple threat last month, Elijah Mays, who, by all counts, is the #1 contender to the Junior Heavyweight Championship now, coming to the aid of Joe Cartwright, helping out, and basically just preserving that his championship opportunity does not get shysted by Emilio Suarez in any way. So segment rating of 28, this rating goes down significantly compared to the last, but we get some good progression from this story. Now moving into our main event, a triple threat match for the heavyweight championship, we've got Rahan Marlowe successfully defending his WHAM heavyweight championship after he pinned Neil Allman. Unfortunately, due to Friedrich Herzog's stamina, we can't do matches longer than 6 minutes. I really would love to, but it's just not going to happen right now. But all in all, segment rating of 53, Neil Allman with a performance of 57, Friedrich Herzog at 57, Rahan Marlowe at 49. Not bad numbers, but we want to see the champion increase his numbers a little bit, but I'm not mad at it. This isn't the greatest match in WHAM history by any means, but it is a very strong match for the heavyweight championship, and it is a good first defense post-Derby for Rahan Marlowe against two very, very capable competitors. All in all, we get another show rating of 47 that is going to continue to help us grow in that popularity, which is huge. This night was highlighted by our heavyweight championship match, as it was from the get-go. We had some good one-on-one action to get the show started. Ivy Baldridge getting involved. We got the team of Super Shield and Super Monkey getting involved as well, so a lot of things are coming and moving around here in the WHAM, as well as the stars that have been around, further establishing themselves as capable competitors, as Elijah Mays gets ready to challenge for the Junior Heavyweight Championship. Joel Cartwright continues his saga with the Suarez siblings. Hermenegildo Ramirez is going to find his way, and we just got a whole lot of stuff going on with the heavyweights as well. And we're going to continue to praise the guys that we know aren't too thrilled. Masked Hammer, Super Shield. Super Shield actually got annoyed due to a backstage involvement. And we gained $2,000. Love to see that constant cash flow increase. Mid-South doesn't go up to 33 just yet. Before we get into the next event, we've got a big piece of news here, as SPW has actually lost a broadcasting slot with their now weekly show. So SPW is making moves. This is going to hurt them a little bit. However, not very much, because this show is being broadcasted on 6 other different stations, and these are radio stations here in 1931. Don't be fooled that it says television. we haven't quite got there yet as far as technology goes and everything like that, because technology like that just had not become common enough at this point in time. But anyway, I digress. Big news, while it's not going to have a huge impact. However, with nothing left in front of us, it's time for the next event, the Amazing Grappling Spectacle Edition 75. What a milestone, and we've got a big show ahead for this occasion. We're going to kick it off with a pre-show match, 3-on-3 tag team action between the Dark Carnival, Blue Mage, Black Bull, and Craig Bean, former tag team champions in fact, although it was quickly stripped away from them. They are going up against Diego Bergen, Christopher Hartwell, and Randy Edson. Of course, the Dark Carnival comes away with a victory. We see a nice performance from Blue Mage with a rating of 47. Craig Bean at 41, Black Bull at 36, Randy Edson 23, Christopher Hartwell at 35, and Diego Bergen actually had a performance of 40. So the roller coaster that is Diego Bergen, at least his in-ring performance, continues. But to get the show started, we've got our junior heavyweight champion, Joe Cartwright, non-title match, going up against former junior heavyweight champion Wayne Blankenship. Joe Cartwright just needing to stay in the ring, continue to compete, given his competitive spirit. So we just see an exhibition match, not a whole lot of strings attached to this one, but we do have some big stakes involving the junior heavyweight championship later tonight. But thanks to some great chemistry between Cartwright and Blankenship, we get a nice match rating of 42. Joe Cartwright had a performance of 50 and Blankenship had a performance of 31. And of course, our champion comes out on top. Another match rating of 42, this time a tag team match, and we've got Hermenegildo Ramirez and Sebastian Morales tagging up to defeat Masked Hammer and Turner Spitler. Turner Spitler and Masked Hammer picked up a victory last month over our ethical enforcers Super Monkey and Super Shield, and Super Monkey and Super Shield once again make their presence known, preventing Hammer and Turner Spitler to bend the rules in their favor, as we all know that Hammer and Spitler are unapologetically going to take any kind of liberties to give themselves any kind of competitive advantage. So we've seen Super Monkey and Super Shield come out before. That's actually how this rivalry began. We see a little bit more of it, just continuing to show the characters that are Super Monkey and Super Shield and their morality stance. And ultimately, they do end up having an effect, causing distractions, as they would just kind of prevent any kind of heelish stuff. They would alert the referee. They would maybe push one of the guys off of the ropes if Turner Spitler or Hammer were taking liberties with any kind of the ropes or anything along those lines. You know, you can get creative in your mind with it. But all in all, we would see a victory for Hermenegildo Ramirez and Sebastian Morales, as those two continue to build some momentum for themselves. And Hermenegildo Ramirez continues to just put on really nice performances in the ring, as he had a 57 rating here, Morales at 47, Hammer at 33, and Turner Spitler down at 32. And we do have a segment after the match where Masked Hammer and Turner Spitler are enraged following the actions of Super Monkey and Super Shield, though unlike last month, the two ethical enforcers never entered the ring, keeping themselves out of harm's way, once again proud of their handiwork. Segment rating at 28, nothing incredible here, and we're gonna move on. And Bronson Fraley and Woodrow Gunter, they actually competed in the show prior, but Bronson Fraley receiving a rematch, considering he actually took the loss against Woodrow Gunter. However, Woodrow Gunter once again picking up the victory, this time due to a botched interference from Chuck Wellington, and that would hurt our match rating ultimately, but I felt like it was important for the story. Bronson Fraley had an in-ring performance of 40, Woodrow Gunter at 42. Solid performances from these guys, but we just get a match rating of 36. Not the best. And as things continue to evolve, I am considering changing the product to allow some more shenanigans towards the end for finishes and matches and stuff like that. I really want to keep it just like straight meat and potatoes fights kind of style for the early 1930s, as there probably wasn't a ton of like entertainment aspect, but it's just so hard because you know, we got to keep the stories. That is a big part of it for me, is the stories as well as the gameplay of TEW. So let me know what you guys think about that, if you object or anything. But I think we might change the product just a little bit, just to give us a little bit more leeway and flexibility with some of the ending of matches, and not just totally butcher our ratings. But moving on, we do have another segment with the Wellington dynasty, as following the loss, Bronson Fraley would once again become animated out of frustration with the Wellington brothers, intimidating the heirs. However, Duke Wellington would take issue this time, standing up to their enforcer. Bronson Fraley would get in the face of Duke, but the Wellington brother didn't back down. Chuck Wellington got in between the two before anything became physical. Fraley would then make his way to the back, collecting himself, with the Wellingtons following close by. Segment rating of 34, not the worst work, and again, we're thankful to have a segment with all of the Wellington brothers that is not below 25, if I'm being 100% honest. But now getting back to the in-ring action, and it's ramping up. Emilio Suarez, Elijah Mays, to truly determine the number one contender for Joe Cartwright's Junior Heavyweight Championship, which they will be competing for at the Frank Norris Memorial Show. And we've got Elijah Mays defeating Emilio Suarez in just under 13 minutes, forcing Emilio to submit. And these two put in some good work here. Emilio Suarez, however, very nice performance of 53, Elijah Mays 41, and we get some more maturation of the story, as well as the Junior Heavyweight Championship title scene just becoming a little bit more clear, as Elijah Mays will be the next one to challenge Joe Cartwright. So, match rating of 49, good work here, and you would come to expect it with who these guys are to our roster, not just to our roster, but to the industry of professional wrestling at this time. These are two of the more well-renowned stars in the entire world. So the folks here in Oklahoma City truly are treated. And another slight bit that was not noted here in the match notes is that Ivy Baldridge actually came ringside, and she and Gabriella started duking it out. And the two ladies would continue to skirmish, and it would ultimately take Gabriella pretty much out of the match entirely. And of course, she's just the manager, not actually involved in the match, but being the kind of heely, slimy manager that Gabriella Suarez is, it is quite the loss for Emilio Suarez, and he would feel that effect for sure. And in the segment after the match, following another crushing defeat for Emilio Suarez, he is unable to withhold his anger and begins to lash out on Gabriella, who Emilio claims had failed him as she had become distracted with Ivy Baldridge. The two siblings argue with one another until Gabriella slaps Emilio across his face and leaves the ring on her own, clearly upset. Segment rating of 40 from these two. And now it's time for our main event. Big names aplenty here in this match. Neil Allman and heavyweight champion Rahan Marlowe teaming up, and there's definitely some tension between these two, make no mistake about it, going 2-on-2 against Friedrich Herzog and Fritz Hattendorf, the Pride. But the tension between Neil Allman and Rahan Marlowe would ultimately cause issue and cause a little bit of miscommunication, distraction if you will, that Friedrich Herzog, the seasoned, wily veteran that he is, was able to take advantage of, and he would actually defeat and submit. And he would send a big message to the heavyweight champion when he submitted Neil Allman, that Friedrich Herzog firmly establishing himself as that number one contender, and he plans on invoking his rematch clause at the Frank Norris Memorial Show for a one-on-one match with Rahan Marlowe. And Friedrich Herzog wants his one-on-one championship rematch with Rahan Marlowe, and he's going to get it at the Frank Norris Memorial Show. So, nice segment rating of 42, big way to end the night, with Rahan Marlowe in-ring performance of 49, Neil Allman at 47, Friedrich Herzog the class of the match at 51, and Fritz Hattendorf, he's hanging with it. Fritz Hattendorf, he was there, but he was definitely the weak link of the match, just getting an in-ring performance of 31. All in all, we see an overall show rating of 41. They didn't like our usage rate of Masked Hammer, but they can get over it, because that man is being established as a very solid mid-card worker. But looking at our segments from the night, the match is connected pretty well, to the exception of that Woodrow Gunter Bronson Fraley, which had a screwy ending. Elijah Mays and Emilio Suarez, you'd hope for a better rating out of that one, but it really wasn't bad. Black Bull and Elijah Mays get the praise for tonight. Another $2,000 was made, and our popularity still sits at 32. As we continue on, heading into our next show, there is a free agent on the market, in Japan at that I really want to get my hands on. It has been broadcasted time and time again that this man has been looking for work, and he's got exceptional performance stats. Charisma 90, microphone 90, acting 73, and his primary and mental is even pretty good. He's very popular in Japan, comparatively speaking, with everyone else, and he is someone that I feel like taking a chance on. I'm confident that he will relocate himself into America, so I won't be paying for his travel for long, but given our profits that we're making on each show, I'm not afraid of spending $200 for a couple months just to make sure that we get this guy, because I really think with the proper nurturing and the proper push and getting him popular in the region, I think he could be someone who gets well over for sure. So we're just going to make it a simple ongoing handshake deal, and we're going to see what he thinks of it. And to no surprise, Black Demon does in fact accept the contract, so we'll be seeing him on the show, maybe at the Frank Norris Memorial Show, who knows. And as we prepare for the Frank Norris Memorial Show, we're going to take you along on the pre-show happenings. So obviously we're giving nobody the night off. We are staying in OKC as we do. We're going to buy a few creative finishes to hopefully bolster the results of this show. The locker room incidents, which are always interesting. We've got Wrestlers Court, some character ideas being brought up, more Wrestlers Court, Fritz Hattendorf and Brian Hatcher getting along, Hermenegildo Ramirez and Randy Edson getting into an argument, and here's the juiciness. Turner Spittler getting heat with Super Shield. We're just going to find him. Turner Spittler is annoyed. Super Shield is pleased. Friedrich Herzog got into a heated argument with a fan. We're going to find him. He had a small positive impact. We'll take that. Black Demon causing heat backstage. He is a troublemaker. We signed ourselves up for this. Causing issue with a good dude on his first night in the locker room. We're going to find him. Randy Edson is pleased. And addressing the locker room, we're going to inspire the boys, but next month we're going to be holding a hardline stance and see if anybody walks out. However, without further ado, I am pleased to bring you the Frank Norris Memorial Show. Or the Frank Norris Tribute Show, rather. Excuse me. My goodness. We're in front of 310 people here in Oklahoma City, and we are getting the night started with a pre-show match with our new signee, Black Demon, picking up a victory over August Washburn. Black Demon was rusty, but we're going to get him some pre-show matches. We're going to get him involved, and he's going to get those in-ring performances up as he builds a little bit of foundational popularity here in the Mid-South, as he's got maybe 2 popularity, I think it is. But anyway, segment rating of 21, not a great match. He got an adequate response from his gimmick. It is an outsider gimmick, though it is not too sweet. We've got another pre-show match as we want to get most guys involved in the card here. Woodrow Gunter, unfortunately I didn't have a significant match for him on the main show because it is only an hour long. I actually need to change that, probably bump it up to an hour and a half just like our other monthly events. But Woodrow Gunter picks up a victory over Diego Bergen in this pre-show match. Woodrow Gunter with a nice in-ring performance of 41, while Diego Bergen had a performance of 39. This one was unfortunate because I really did not want this to have to be on the pre-show match, but with the way that it worked, this is just how it happened. We see 3 teams competing in a tag team match: Hermenegildo Ramirez, Sebastian Morales, Turner Spittler and Masked Hammer, and Super Monkey and Super Shield, the Ethical Enforcers. Just more brewing of the issues between Super Monkey, Super Shield, and Turner Spittler and Masked Hammer, though this time Sebastian Morales and Hermenegildo Ramirez are kind of that neutral party, wanting to prove that their victory last month, or earlier this month rather, was no fluke, and they actually double up with another victory, this time defeating both teams. And this match is set up as an elimination triple threat tag team match, but in canon, it is not an elimination. It is a 1 fall to a finish. But some notable performances here: Sebastian Morales, 57, Hermenegildo Ramirez, 56. Super Monkey had a nice performance at 46. He is really nice in the ring. Super Shield at 24, Masked Hammer 34, and Turner Spittler at 33. All in all, a segment rating of 43 that it's unfortunate that it had to be on the pre-show match. But to get our actual show started, we've got Albie Dewberry kicking off the show in the ring, excited to speak to the audience and get the night going. However, Neil Allman would actually make his way down to the ring himself, interrupting the former junior heavyweight champion. Neil Allman would take it upon himself to assist Albie with getting the night started. Neil Allman would take a moment to put Dewberry over with the crowd before highlighting his match with Fritz Hattendorf later this evening. Neil Allman would also take a moment to acknowledge Frank Norris, as Allman was a member of the original Wham roster. So Neil Allman not necessarily saying anything bad or anything like that, but it was kind of weird that he felt the need to come out and kind of steal some spotlight. Not necessarily, I don't think it has anything to do with Dewberry specifically, but more so Neil Allman he's got this weird thing and this weird feeling that he has got to be the one to cut these promos if anyone's going to do it. Segment rating at 39, not the angle that you would hope for, but we know it's not because of Neil Allman, I can say that much. Our first match of the actual show is some female action between Gabriela Suarez and Ivy Baldridge. And there's not a ton of shenanigans going on here, but Ivy Baldridge would get a huge upset over Gabriela Suarez with a quick roll-up, defeating the Suarez sibling. Gabriela Suarez had an in-ring performance at 39, Ivy Baldridge at 33, and we know these two have been going at one another. They've been sabotaging the other. Gabriela Suarez, of course, helping Emilio. Ivy Baldridge kind of a thorn in the side of both the Suarez siblings. All in all, we get a match rating of 34. Not terrible for the ladies here. Up next, we get another kind of lackluster match, but it's not the most surprising results given who we've got competing, but we've got the return of the Dark Carnival, Black Bull, Blue Mage, Craig Bean, and this time including Bryant Hines in the ring, defeating the Wellington Dynasty, Chuck Wellington, Angus, Duke, and Bronson Fraley. Now, what is the surprising bit is the fact that Bronson Fraley was a part of taking the loss here, because Bronson Fraley is probably the most capable competitor out of the bunch here, as he is the only former heavyweight champion competing in this match. However, the Dark Carnival, they come up with another big victory. If you were here for the last episode, you would know that the Dark Carnival defeated the Wellington Dynasty for the Tag Team Championships, but at the start of this episode, the Wellington Dynasty, the Wellington Brothers, they stripped the Dark Carnival of their Tag Team Championships when they dissolved the Tag Team titles here in the WHAM for the moment anyway. But what we see here is a match rating of 38. Dark Carnival performed well. Bryant Hines only got 24, but he is really not an in-ring competitor much at all. Craig Bean, 45, Blue Mage, 48, Black Bull, 45. Good numbers for those guys. Bronson Fraley leading the pack on the Wellington Dynasty side at 44, Duke at 28, Chuck Wellington at 33, not bad for him, and Angus at a 19. I gotta remember to at least tweak the gimmick of Black Bull, because that has been an error message for me for quite a while that I just have not done anything about. Moving into the next segment rating at 35 here with this one, as the communication issues persist between Bronson Fraley and the Wellington Brothers following another loss. The Wellington Brothers are unhappy with Fraley, and Fraley isn't afraid to hide his frustrations either. After being blamed for the loss, Bronson Fraley would strike Duke Wellington down, which came as a shock to Chuck and Angus. Bronson Fraley would leave the ring area, but this time the Wellington Brothers did not follow. Segment rating at 35 here for the Wellington Dynasty boys. And as we said, segment rating at 35 and just more issues with these four gentlemen. Moving on into the next match, we've got Neil Allman back in the ring, this time competing, and as we know, against Fritz Hattendorf. Neil Allman taking care of business against the member of the Pride, and it is becoming clear that Neil Allman is in fact starting to turn things around. We're starting to see a bit of a mean streak come out of Neil Allman. A bit more intensity here in the ring, a little bit less hesitation and a little bit less reservation or any kind of consideration for his opponents. Neil Allman with an in-ring performance of 48. Fritz Hattendorf, we know he's not the best competitor, gets an in-ring performance of 32, not bad, and we get a match rating of 41 altogether. Following his victory, Neil Allman would quickly make his way ringside, interrupting Riker Zucker from announcing his victory. Allman would take the microphone from Zucker and would announce his victory himself. In what has become a common occurrence, Neil Allman once again detaches the microphone and brings it with him to the back. So just more development of this new side of Neil Allman, and we've yet to see truly how it's going to turn out. But segment rating of 48 here as we continue on. Big Junior Heavyweight Championship match between Elijah Mays and Joe Cartwright, and we would see a new champion be crowned, as Elijah Mays would force Joe Cartwright to submit after 14 minutes with a guillotine choke. These two went out and tried to steal the show. Not bad numbers, but we've seen better. But Elijah Mays had an in-ring performance of 43, Joe Cartwright at 48. Altogether, we get a segment match rating of 48. The great Matsuo did some good work ringside for our boy Elijah Mays. Joe Cartwright unfortunately was really off of his game, but he still was able to deliver a good in-ring performance. We do have a successful creative finish involved as well, and you'd like to see some better numbers. I think we could have pulled a better number than 48, but 48 is certainly nothing that we're going to shake our heads at this point in time. After a match full of intensity, Joe Cartwright meets the new champion in the center of the ring, offering his hand in a sign of respect. Elijah Mays would stoically assess the situation in front of him before ultimately accepting the handshake and returning the respect to the former champion. So just a small moment here in the ring between former champion and new champion shaking hands. Segment rating of 41. Our main event, these are the numbers that we're looking for here. Segment rating of 58. Friedrich Herzog with an in-ring performance of 64. This dude came and delivered. However, did not capture the heavyweight champion, as Rahan Marlowe, no shenanigans, in a clean victory, the fourth defense of his heavyweight championship reign, defeating Friedrich Herzog one-on-one. We got another successful creative finish, and this is the kind of segment rating that we have been looking for throughout this night. So good work here between Rahan Marlowe, who got an in-ring performance of 53, and Friedrich Herzog, of course, getting that 64 as previously mentioned. So a really strong way to end the show, and that bolsters our show rating, giving us an overall of 52 for the Frank Norris Tribute Show. And top to bottom, I'm pretty happy with the way that this show went. Honestly, the ladies performed better than I thought they would. The only thing that really fell flat was that promo with Neil Allman and Albie Dewberry to start the night off. And then, of course, the Wellington Dynasty boys are just a ratings vacuum, unfortunately, anytime we put them in the ring. But good match between Allman and Hattendorf, good junior heavyweight championship matches. We see a new champion crowned and the heavyweight champion retained by Rahan Marlowe. Then we're going to show some love to Masked Hammer and Black Bull. Pulled in $2,200 for this show. We continue to stack them dollars. We do see that popularity jump from 32 to 33, and you'd love to see that. And that is going to do it for our Frank Norris Tribute Show. The feedback was awesome, that the small company has outshone some of the bigger companies' recent efforts. Once again, looking at you, SPW. So a big episode here today, and another big episode will be awaiting us the next time we come back to this database and this save. So a huge shout out to those subscribed to the Real One tier on Patreon. You guys are awesome, and your support is greatly appreciated. But otherwise, this is all I got for you guys, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy.